Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast, where personal stories spark powerful shifts. Today's guest is Tonya Lester, a Brooklyn-based psychotherapist, writer, and the author of Push Back, Live, Love, and Work with Others Without Losing Yourself. You may have seen her work in the New York Times Modern Love column or read her candid insights in Psychology Today. In this conversation, Tonya opens up about her own journey, why so many women silence their needs, and how we can reclaim our voice without guilt or apology. Whether in love, work, or everyday life, this episode is your invitation to push back and take up space. Welcome, Tonya.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure to be here with you today. Before we dive into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why?
Connection. Connection is my highest value. Being with the loved ones, which I love that we're coming into the holiday season, my favorite time of year. I am born into a huge family and always have felt rich in love and connection. And so I'm going to go with that one.
Okay, very interesting. Let me take a step back here. You were born into a large family. You're a psychotherapist, so you know Alfred Adler's sibling order.
Right.
How many siblings do you have?
I'm one of four, and we also would have additional kids living with us sometimes. So it was a very rambunctious household. And I am the oldest, and I think I'm a clear eldest child, definitely. So my siblings would definitely agree with that, a little bossy.
Okay, gotcha. I was going to say, like, where are you in that order? Interesting. Okay, so you're the oldest, and you know that framework of the oldest, but you know, if there's nuances there and there's changes with that too. And so let's get to your story. Tell us a little about your journey as a psychotherapist and what was the draw to the profession.
I've always been interested in people's stories. I'm very ADD. I hop around from thing to thing. I have a lot of curiosity about many things. But one thing I never get sick of is hearing people's stories and trying to help people find their way, find their North Star, and navigate towards what will make the most of this one life, one precious life that we have. And of course, then connecting back to my word, connections, I really do believe that the relationships are the foundation of our life. All of our pain and joy and excitement can usually go back to how we were in a relationship, how we were treated, how we treated others. And so it's really like life's work. I have a lot of curiosity about people and how they connect with others.
Tonya, I love that word. Connection, curiosity. That's so important in your line of work and just as a human being and feeling connected with community, feeling the connection with others. I used to work in the largest locked facility in the state of California, assessing people who were suicidal, homicidal, and gravely disabled. And people would say, how do you do that work? How do you do that every day? And I said, but everybody's story is different. Everybody's story is unique. And I want to hear that story. That story is important to me to do the best I can for that person.
That's right.
And so I love that your words are connection and curiosity. So you've had such a dynamic journey, therapist, writer, now author of Push Back. What personal experiences inspired this book?
So there was two trails that came together to meet at a trailhead. And one was my sister, who I'm very, very close to, was going through a very hard divorce. And she is someone who is resourced. She has a wonderful job. She has beautiful children. She has many, many friends. Our family is very close. And she got into this long marriage when she was, in her 20s, when many of us do connect with our partners. And she really lost her voice. It was really like watching the life force drain out of someone that you love very deeply. And I felt like, wow, how did this happen to her? How was she so silenced? as a therapist, you deal with this all the time. Women coming in or as a couple or by themselves saying, I just don't even try anymore. I don't even speak up anymore. Nothing's going to change. And then I kind of put my head up in my own life, right? It's so easy to focus on other people. And I thought, oh, this is happening to me too. And so if this is happening to me with everything I know, and this is happening to my sister and all of these clients, not every woman, but many women, I thought, you know what? I'm going to put this in a book. It's time.
Yeah, I love that. You're exactly right. You hear from many people about how they lose themselves in a relationship, whether or not that is in a loving relationship or a work relationship, a family relationship. I have a friend who tends to shut down when her mother's in the room because of that dynamic that was created over the years. And she's like, it's not even worth it to say anything around that person. And that to me is absolutely heartbreaking. So when I heard about your book, Push Back, Live, Love, and Work with Others Without Losing Yourself, I thought, what an incredible concept. What a great book, because we need to hear more of what you have to say. Because even a very loving relationship, because that's such a unique dynamic that they separate from their own voice, they shut
Mm-hmm.
down. They go inward, or they start doing things without their partner because they don't feel heard, seen, all that stuff. So, what are some of the subtle ways women lose themselves in relationships or at work?
What I find most often, and I talk about this a lot in the book, is there's this socialization around being pleasing and over functioning. And so, if we're going to be pleasing, then we really have to edit ourselves pretty strongly to make sure that we don't say anything that might be displeasing. And then, if we're over functioning, we're probably over managing our household. Often, the one in charge of taking the new associates out at work or decorating for people's birthday, all this work that is valued but not promotable, right? That's not what they're going to bring up in your year-long review. And so, with this idea of I have to please and I have to overfunction and I cannot speak up when something is unfair, pretty soon we're trying to kind of maneuver our way around other people and often silencing ourselves. And so, even back to your example, and I have examples like this in the book with your friend and her mom, it's like if we silence ourselves, we are no longer known and there's no chance of emotional intimacy. So for your friend, that is so sad for her. And it's tragic for her mother. If my daughter, I found out, was not talking around me and I didn't really know her because I was so volatile or controlling or just took up all the air in the room, nothing would break my heart more than knowing that, right? It just cuts off that emotional intimacy that we want with our children, we want with our partners, we want with our families.
Yeah.
And sometimes we want at work, we want to be known at work. Obviously, it's a little different at work because we're in a role, but we want to feel valued at work. We want to be seen for what we bring to the table. And if we're silent, we aren't seen.
Yeah. So many things come to mind when you start talking about those connections, about, let's say, for instance, my friend and her connection with her mother. When I grew up, my mother was like an open book. The first thing she said when she wanted to talk about the birds and bees, I was probably around 8 or 9, and she gets into bed and she snuggles with me and she's like, I want to talk to you about some things, and don't be embarrassed. If you are, I understand, but we're going to talk about some things really openly. I want there to be open communication between the two of us. And that's how I grew up, right? With
Mm-hmm.
that authenticity, that transparency. She said, I may not like everything you say, but I would rather hear it and know that you're safe
That's right.
and that we have this communication versus you going out and talking to other people about it, getting wrong information or blah, 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 right? I mean, we're going to still do that to a certain degree, but it was nice to have that open dialogue with my mom.
Yeah.
But you think about somebody like my friend, and I'm like, wow, that's really sad because her mom digs in and doesn't really want to hear anything that's said. So, how do you actually work with somebody like that who digs in and you're not going to move them from that position that they're in?
So I have a couple of things I advocate for in that position. One, and this is not the happy part. Like this is not really what people want to hear. We of course can't make someone change. And if someone is dug in the case of your friend, her mom has whatever in her past or history or trauma or how she learned to be an adult, is just shut down, if she will not collaborate with your friend, like she will not soften, then your friend is limited.
Right.
But what I would say is still an act of confidence and power and owning yourself, kind of to make someone deal with you, even if they don't want to, right? Like having someone be mad at you isn't the end of the world. And this is something I talk about in the book. How do we get our nervous system calm enough to take these kinds of risks when the other person isn't going to respond well? And in the book, I have an example, and this isn't a huge example, but it's something that comes up around families, holidays, whatnot, is a woman I work with. She didn't want to do the traditional spread for their Christmas holidays. She just wanted everyone to bring appetizers and wear Christmas pajamas and for it to be really relaxed and fun. And her mom had always done a very formal dinner. And her mom was furious. But my client just persevered. She was like, I'm hosting now. It's my holiday too. This is what will make it fun for me. I just want everyone to try it. If everybody hates it, we'll look at what we can do next year. And of course, it was a beautiful holiday. Her mom came around. It was lovely. And now it's the new tradition. I love the saying, and I use it in the book. If you want to make an omelet, you've got to break some eggs. And I really do think that sometimes we have to break eggs, even if the other person is going to be mad and does not want the omelet. If we want the omelet, we should go ahead and make an omelet.
I love that. There's so much involved there too. I mean, there's some historical context to all of this and women losing their voices. There's some conditioning from family to family. There's the type of mentorship you might have had or what you've seen and what you've heard. Like you said, kind of challenging, but sometimes you have to break those eggs to get that
Mm-hmm.
omelet. And that happens in work situations too, especially when there's a difference between showing your emotion and being emotional
That's right.
in regards to a position that you have in a workplace. So, how do you get your voice heard without somebody seeing a woman as too emotional? Because I believe there is a place for emotions in work and how people perceive us
Yes.
and hear us. So, how do people overcome some of those things at work in relation to being able to intervene with a bit of emotion, but not being overly emotional
Yeah.
or emotive?
So with work, we do have to be more strategic, of course. One thing I advocate for people often is this idea of speaking for your emotion instead of from your emotion. And so from your emotion might be like, you hijacked that meeting and you took all the credit. For your emotion might be, I left that meeting feeling really upset. I don't like the way it went down. Here's what I saw, and here's how I hoped it went, and here's how I'd like to see it go in the future. I'm ready to hear what you have to say. But to say you're upset without yelling, I think that this is what you're alluding to. Some emotion is good, right? Because emotion helps us be heard. And so never appearing angry or never being disappointed or never even being hurt, one, it's unrealistic. And two, it kind of allows people to pat us on the head and say that it really wasn't that big of a deal. So you can say, I'm furious actually with how that went. If you say it like that, then you're not yelling, you're not calling names, you're not attacking, but you're being very, very clear. And what I say over and over in the book and in my practice is you can be direct, you can be concise, you can be clear without being attacking or mean. And what I see over and over is women decide not to say something because they feel like their choices are to say nothing or to throw a hand grenade into the middle of their lives. And I don't believe in throwing hand grenades, but I do believe in speaking up. And if you need to take a minute, go to the bathroom, cry, take a bunch of deep breaths. Give yourself 24 hours to kind of recalibrate your nervous system. I absolutely advocate for that, and then write down what you want to say, prepare yourself, but then go in and say it. Don't use that time to talk yourself out of doing the courageous thing.
Yeah. And I love those words. Don't talk yourself out of doing the courageous thing. And sometimes, again, you have to do the courageous thing to create those steps that move you forward, right? So I want you to go over something for us because we hear this word a lot, and some people may not know exactly what this means. I mean, I was even talking to somebody about this, and they were like, what does that word mean? And so, can you tell us what gaslighting is and what is the best way to respond when it happens?
Gaslighting is when someone encourages you to ignore your own feelings, your own understanding, your own view of the evidence in lieu of their narrative about what's happening, right? And it's based on a movie by Ingmar Bergman where the villain makes his wife feel like she's going crazy, right? She believes she's a kleptomaniac. She believes she's having insomnia, right? So that's the very extreme version. What we see more often is the wonderful Richard Pryor line when his wife catches him in bed with another woman and he says, "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?" Right? That is gaslighting. Like that is gaslighting. And so, what we have to do if we feel like we're being gaslit, and I just want to separate a little because I think it is one of those words that is maybe thrown around a little bit too much. Oftentimes, people have different narratives of what is happening. That's not the same as gaslighting. To say, like, this is how I saw it, this is how I saw it, doesn't mean you're being gaslit. To say, nope, that didn't happen, you're crazy, that's being gaslit.
Yeah.
So, when you are being gaslit, how you'll know is you will feel very uneasy. You won't be sure if you can trust yourself. And you're going to have this wobbly insecurity that is unique to that relationship, right? If you're feeling this way with everybody, then go get yourself sorted out. That's a great time for therapy. But if it's happening in one relationship, trust yourself. Trust yourself that this is not okay. And so you have to really nail down your position by saying, I feel like you're redirecting. I feel like you're encouraging me to ignore what I know to be true, and that is not okay with me. Then you just keep reiterating your position. But I will tell you, if you're in a relationship where this is coming up often, you have to think long and hard about why you are with someone who is asking you to second guess yourself. In a work environment, I suggest people document everything. I suggest people bring other people into the fold early on so that there's witnesses to what happened. In the book, I call them coercive communications, and there's a whole list of them. They really flourish in secrecy and isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And so even just having it all written down, you can have a little ledger of what your boss said was going to happen, A, B, and C. And then when they act like you're crazy for coming back and asking for the promotion you were promised, it's good to remind yourself, no, I wrote this down. And by all means, CC HR on the emails early on, bring someone else from the team in. So no secrecy and really get allied up, find other people who can help ground you in what you know is true.
Love that guidance. So important. Thank you for going over that, the description of what gaslighting is. This has been not just a concept, but a construct that has been going on for a long time, for ages and ages. I read a book back in college called The Yellow Wallpaper.
Okay.
That book showed what gaslighting could do. It showed the depth of it, and that person started to depress. That person was put in one room. It was so sad. It really spoke to the extreme of this.
Yes.
We don't have to get to that extreme, especially if you're aware of it. You're listening to, like you said, that intuition. If it's that one relationship where this continues to happen and happen and happen, you've got to question and keep your position as A, B, or C and naming that position and talking about that position. But at work, I love that guidance. Document, 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 and don't be in it alone. Because that can also happen at home if you're in a volatile relationship where there's isolation, where there's a lot of things happening where you feel so alone, where the point is to have you be isolated.
That's right.
So that they can really do this to you. So thank you so much for covering that. In your book, you encourage women to quote unquote, be difficult. What does this really mean and why is this necessary?
I love be difficult as a little mantra we can all have in our head, not because you're really being difficult, but because it's taking a risk to speak up and have your voice heard and your voice at the table, even when it's not what somebody else wants. So I like difficult as a difficult woman to me is a woman who speaks up, believes that her preferences and opinions and needs and wants matter as much as everyone else's, not necessarily more, but definitely deserve a seat at the table. And a difficult woman isn't walking around all the time worrying everyone's mad at her. And this is what I would love to see us getting away from. Leave the responsibility for someone else to say they're upset with you with them, right? Do your best, be kind but direct. And then if someone has a problem, let them be the adult in the room and talk to you. I think that if we say, I'm going to be difficult in this situation, I have one example. I was writing the book, and at the time the book was called Be Difficult, and I was in a movie theater, and this guy had his big cell phone on, lit up, right? It was so distracting for everyone around him. and I wanted to say something, but I don't want to be difficult. And I was like, get a hold of yourself. You are writing a book called Be Difficult. Right. And so, of course, I said, excuse me, could you please turn off your phone? And he grumbled and he gave me the side eye and it was all fine. He did turn off the phone. So being difficult is just speaking up when it's called for or you want to.
Thank you for that and that example, because a lot of times it's the small things that can really kind of nag at you. And there's a way of approaching it where you don't have to be reactionary. You can be responsive in your response. It's about that moment where you can take that breath and then get recalibrated and then do the action part of that.
That's right.
So it can be a response, not a reaction, and be a little bit more emotionally agile. It's like being aware and having that emotional agility to work through those issues. And so I think that's why your book just really resonated with me and so many others. It's because that emotional agility, that understanding our own emotions, taking control and power over that, having our voice, there are ways that we can do that, which feel very empowering rather than feeling defeating. So I think a lot of times when we take that position of we're going to take our voice back, we're like you said, that grenade where we throw it all in and go, oh, I'm going to take my voice back. And then all of a sudden you feel defeated because you're like, that's not the end goal I wanted.
No, right. Everybody's just mad for no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this conversation. We've covered quite a bit from what drew you to the profession of psychotherapy to the evolution of this book, why it was important, how it came to be. So as we come to the close of the interview, my last question is, for anyone listening who wants to speak up but feels overwhelmed, what's one step they can take today to start reclaiming their voice?
I like to advise that people write it down first. I think if we take a moment by ourselves, it's not threatening, and we decide what we want to say. It's just like getting ready to do a job interview or a speech. If we're prepared, it's going to go better. So take a minute. If you feel overwhelmed, flooded with emotion in the hard minute, decide ahead of time. I'm going to say, this isn't okay with me. I want something different, or this isn't working anymore. This is what I need to see, or I've been feeling really upset, really isolated, really lonely, really overlooked. And here's what I need from you. You can say those things in a clear, concise manner. And if you feel like, oh my God, this is impossible to say, write it down first. I offer scripts in the book, but give yourself a little script and work from that. We can build up our courage alone and then go say the difficult thing to the person who needs to hear it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tonya, for being on the Core Women podcast with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Oh, absolutely. You can connect with Tonya Lester on LinkedIn and on IG at Tonya Lester Psychotherapy and at www.tonyalester.com. And you can find her book on Amazon.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.